of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing. Observe a moment of silence for my student's friend that passed away over last weekend. Thank you. School board director, person that's a parent in this district. John sent us some memo of board members last for the day about this young man. It's the worst thing that we can go through. It was in the state of it. Since I've been here, we've lost a couple. It's just, I really goes out to the parents, the family, but it's never easy to lose somebody at such a young age. It's so much more difficult. That's the recording secretary for the roll call.
Joan McKay?
Here.
Ryan Carson?
Here.
Jessica Decker?
Here.
Lori Hammer?
Here.
Sam Lutfi?
Here.
Michael Leary?
Here.
Alicia Sheehan?
Here.
Rosemary Walsh?
Here.
And John McGlasky?
Here. The executive session was held on Thursday, May 9th, 2019. May I have we discussed personnel. Executive session. May I have a volunteer to read the mission statement?
All right. Delaware Valley School District, in partnership with our community, stands committed to maximizing student potential, fostering lifelong learning, and promoting responsible citizenship.
May I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And no objection, the motion carries. We have no presentations today. We have two presentations?
We didn't.
Sorry, John, for jumping the gun. That just, you know, when I hear a student, guys, it really just throws me for a loop, so I apologize. So, all right, I'll suspend what I'm doing right now and turn it over to Dr. Bell.
Thank you. We have two presentations tonight. The first one is an Eagle Scout presentation. And for those in the community that don't know, we've been blessed with so many Eagle Scouts in the last couple of years. And we always invite our Eagle Scouts here to be honored. And tonight we have Lucas Helms. He has a really busy schedule. We've been trying to find a Thursday that works, but we're so glad that he finally was able to come. So Lucas is going to come up to the podium and tell us about his project. Yep.
Thank you, Dr. Bell, Dr. Baum, and school board members for having me here. My Eagle Scout project was I built 3 little free libraries in the boroughs of Matamoros and the city of Port Jervis. I had my Eagle Board review in February, and I completed the construction beginning of the school year this year. So, thank you very much. Is there any questions?
So you said a free library?
Oh yes, a little free library.
So what is a free library?
A little free library is if you have a book and it's a box where there's a bunch of books in there. If you have a book, you can put one in and then take one out, and the cycle can continue.
So we've used both of those in Matamoros already, my family, I know, because you have one right in front of Borough Hall, I believe, and one at Airport Park, right?
Yep.
Yeah, we walk to the one right at Borough Hall every other week, you know, the kids love it, so kudos to you. Great
Thank
job.
you.
Yeah, I saw this the other day, and then now this explains it. Fantastic. Now, if somebody wanted to donate a couple books, do you just put them in there, or?
You can put them in there, or if you could turn the books over to the Pike County Public Library or the Port Jervis Free Library. Or, Port Jervis Free Library.
So did you work with those libraries on this?
I did. They're the beneficiaries of the project.
How many hours involved?
Well over 100, I believe.
Wow.
So
How many books are in each?
It would depend on how big the books are, and
Is it mostly for kids, or are there adult books in it as well?
there's a good mixture of both.
The bookmarks have a nice picture,
Yeah.
so you can get a visual, and most of you, when you look at it, you can say, oh yeah, now I see it.
Yeah.
There's the one in Portsmouth over by Burger King.
It is.
That's a great spot, everybody comes around that turn.
Yeah.
Now, how'd you get this idea? Had you seen these before, or read about them, or?
My aunt had forwarded me a news article about one that another Eagle Scout had done. So,
So I've sat here now for a while. We've had lots of Eagle Scouts come in, and without a doubt, it's my favorite project. I have two young daughters, and they go to the library, they go to the Port Jarvis Library, and they go to the Pike County Library. They're there 2-3 times a week. My education was basically supplemented. I learned a bunch of different languages because I traveled the world, and it was all out of the New York City public library system. So I've always children, myself and Corey, we do a lot of different things in our own closet. Events were always done by City Hall there.
Yeah.
But, is that what we call it, City Hall, or is it down?
Borough.
Borough. Yeah. So in New York City, everything is City Hall.
Yeah.
But my little girls love going into that library because they never know what they're going to find.
Yep.
And, you know, like I say, at Delaware Valley, we teach subjects here, but everything else in the world you got to know.
Yeah.
Is sitting in the Pike County Public Library, or it's sitting in the Port Jarvis Library. It's sitting in a library. Everything else you need to know in the world, and it's really cool that they get a great kick out of, especially my little one, when she opens the door and she finds a different book, and it's like an adventure.
Yeah.
I always say about reading is that I was a very poor kid, but I read, and I went to many, many places when I read. I always say a child that reads gets to travel an awful lot, because you can travel within your mind and imagination. So, of all the projects that I've seen some really good Eagle Scout projects since I've seen it. That's my favorite. You know? Just great. Thanks very much. I
Thank you.
appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Lucas, I just want to say, as a former scout, it's one of my regrets in life that I never made it to Eagle Scout. So I just want to congratulate you. I know how much work goes into that, and it's going to pay its benefits in your future life. So congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Okay, our second presentation is by an organization called Odyssey to Save Our World. First time they emailed me, I thought it was a new high school group, and then as they started talking, I realized they're from Mrs. Chamberlain's class at Finley Delaware Elementary School. So then I was twice as impressed. And then I got to meet them when I was in visiting their classroom a couple weeks ago. And they asked if they could come and talk to you, and I said absolutely. So, Mrs. Chamberlain, if you want to square them in, they can introduce themselves and tell us about the project.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Bell and School Board, for allowing us to come and allowing them to share something that's very, very close to their heart. Let me give you just a little bit of a background before they do their presentation so you know how they got to this point. Earlier in the year, they started just getting together over recess time, and they made a little club and put up signs in the classroom that if you wanted to be part of the club, you could meet out on the playground at recess during a certain time. And there were a bunch of them that got together. And the first thing that they did was make posters, and they asked Mrs. McNeely if they could put posters up around the school about saving the earth and about pollution and about global warming. And so they did that. And then after that, the participation kind of dwindled off. And what we had left were these 4 special people that are very passionate about what they want to share with you tonight. So after the poster, they decided they wanted to take it a little bit farther. Some of the boys and girls are in Mrs. Haupt's gifted class. And so they went to Mrs. Haupt and they asked her if they would help her, or if they would help them make a website. And so that's what they did. They started it in gifted and then just took it. Some of them were familiar with working on a website, and they just took it from there and just flew with it. And they've worked very, very hard on it. They've given up recess time, indoor recess time to work on it. Whenever they're finished with other classroom work, the thing that you see them doing is getting together, huddling together, working on the website. So they're very proud of it. We're very proud of it. And like I said, they're very, very passionate about what they've done and the difference that they want to make in the world. And so without any further ado, I'll introduce them to you and then I'll let them take over the presentation. So this is Angelina Berry, Julia Van Yankee, Madison Kirchow, and Dylan O'Keefe. Hi. Okay, so you guys ready? All yours.
We are making our habitat unlivable. We are killing animals. And do you know why? Pollution. So all we have to do is stop polluting. But we cannot even do that simple task. We must make a change. We have to stop. We can't even look outside without seeing trash. Even the Marinella Trench has litter in it. This is bad. If you want to save your only home, then read on. Animals are eating trash and dying. In this website, we will talk about several problems. TOTSOW stands for the Odyssey to Save Our World. Please join this movement. Save our Earth, our only home.
Climate change is causing problems all over the world. Climate change will still happen, but humans and pollution are making it worse. The greenhouse effect. The greenhouse effect is a natural process that warms the Earth's atmosphere. When the sun's energy reaches Earth, some of its reflection produced from the planet goes back to space, and the rest is absorbed and re-radiated by the greenhouse effect. The sun's warmth is being trapped in the lower atmosphere because the upper atmosphere is transparent. The lower atmosphere is not transparent, and the sun's rays that seep through the upper atmosphere get trapped. This heats up the Earth's surface. Great Barrier Reef. For a long time, ecosystems have survived natural disasters, but the scientists have spoken and there's only so much that one, even the largest ecosystem, can hold. Climate change has been testing the ecosystem's patience and bothering the Great Barrier Reef. Scientists have been studying the death and birth of corals. The study shows that a few heat waves caused mass bleaching of the Great Barrier Reef. Most of the adult corals died off and there were less new corals settling. If we don't stop this, the Great Barrier Reef will die. Think about that next time you litter a pool.
Everyone can help save the Earth, including you. Ways you can help. There are so many things you can do to help save the Earth. When you use water, don't leave the faucet on. Turn it off. That little thing can save our Earth big time. Drink bottled water. That's just harming our Earth. First of all, the waste of packaging. Second, you're throwing out the plastic. Use tap water instead of bottled water. Or use a reusable water bottle. Just by doing this, you can help save the Earth. Pick up trash on the side of the road. Recycle plastic water bottles, glass bottles, and any paper. If you're going to a close destination, leave your car at home and ride your bike. This will reduce greenhouse gases. To reduce the amount of solid waste, turn it into compost. This makes a great natural fertilizer. When you're not in a room, turn off your lights or any electronics. Switch to more energy-sufficient light bulbs. Make sure your car is in good condition by keeping its tires inflated. Underinflated tires make the car use more gas to go fast as usual, which increases pollution and greenhouse gases. Drive slower than 60 miles per hour. This will save fuel. Do not brake or accelerate quickly. You see, this whole thing is one big ripple effect. The stone, pollution, causes the ripples, namely global warming, climate change, etc. All pictures borrowed from Weebly and Google Images. A special thanks to the people who are in our organization: Madison, Dylan, Julia, Marin, Aaron, and Oliver. Pollution has a devastating effect on wildlife and nature and will continue to do so in the future. Air pollution can negatively impact human health and cause coughs, burning eyes, breathing problems, and even death. Take your time and look at any community. There are many different forms of contamination of a body of water filled with chemicals, industrial refactoring, trash blown away from landfills, and our only home overflowing with smog and chemicals. The landscapes that are beautiful can feel the effects of pollution from hundreds of miles away. Sadly, every 24 hours, humans are being harmed or killed by air pollution. For example, air pollution has been proved to cause death and lung cancer. Pollution equals danger. Help us today and pick up harmful trash. The three main types of pollution are air pollution. Air pollution is toxins and chemicals in the air. Water pollution. Water pollution is contamination of a body of water. Soil pollution. Soil pollution is toxins and chemicals in soil that can harm the ecosystem.
Saving Earth, Little by Little, by Topsal. Saving Earth, Little by Little, by Topsal. Topsal stands for the Odyssey to Save Our World. We would like to spread the word that the world is in danger. We want to help, but we need more people to do that. Join us and save the world. Together we can make a difference. We need you. Some of the Earth's problems are garbage, oil spills, the greenhouse effect, ice caps melting, and pollution. Garbage. Do you want forests to look like this? If not, you're like most people that try to care for the earth. If humans and animals drink polluted water, then they could be harmed or even die. Litter could do super harmful things. An example of that would be clogging storm water drains and causing bad flooding. When you throw trash on the ground when it rains, toxins from some trash seeps into the ground. That makes it somewhat toxic. Trash gets into water and hurts a ton of animals. Take, for example, sea turtles. Sea turtles have been eating plastic waste and it's been causing blockages in their digestive system. Oil spill. Oil spills affect animals in two different ways. The oil itself can smother animals. Sea otters are one of the animals that are affected by this. The lasting effect can also damage the entire ecosystem for years.
The greenhouse effect. The greenhouse effect is a natural process that warms the Earth's surface. As you may have seen, the Earth is going through one of these phases. This is natural, but humans are accelerating the process, making it much worse. If we don't stop, it could have a devastating effect. Ice caps. People say it would take more than 5,000 years for the ice caps to melt. Antarctica's ice melt has accelerated by 280% in the last 4 decades. If the ice caps melt, the water levels would rise. If it rises too much, they'll put some places underwater, like Margaret City, New Jersey, St. Helena Island, South Carolina, Secaucus, New Jersey, and many more. Sometimes introducing into Earth that helps negative effects. Air pollution. Contaminants occurs when gases, dust particles, smoke, or odor are introduced into the atmosphere in a way that makes it harmful to humans and animals and plants. Water pollution. Contamination of any body of water like in an ocean, lake, river, pond, or creek. Soil pollution. Contamination of soil. When you put pesticides, filters, fertilizers on a plant, it sometimes seeps into the soil. How you can help. Pick up trash, recycle, volunteer, plant a tree, Use reusable bags. Spread the word. Conserve water. Bless you. Bless you. Thanks for watching. Bye. Who made this possible. We hope this slideshow and website will help inspire you to think about our Earth and how every tiny little bit can make a big impact. We need you. Check that.
Do you have any questions for them?
I just want to say thank you so much. That's such an important issue. And, you know, several generations back, people didn't think about the Earth the same way. And it was just 50 years ago that we had astronauts land on the moon. And in those missions to the moon, they took the first picture from outer space of the Earth. And it started to change the way we think about having to sustain the Earth and protect the Earth. And sometimes it takes a few generations to really let that sink in, something new like that. And I can't think of anything more important. And I thank you for doing it.
Thanks for coming down. My young daughters, they're in DB too, and they're all into this stuff. And my wife's a crocheter. It's like, I don't know really what it is. It's like knitting, only tying a lot of knots and stuff. I just stay out of her way when she's doing it. It's smart for a man. But she takes the plastic bags, the shopping bags that when you go to the store with, she takes them and she makes like a yarn out of them. And then she crochets them all together and she makes a reusable bag. And I thought it was really a cool idea. My daughters came up with that idea for her. And it was really good to see it. It's like what Brian says. Myself and Brian are very similar in age, although he probably looks a lot better than me. When those astronauts took off to the moon, we never landed on the moon before, and I was 7 years old when they did this, and I remember we had a TV brought into a classroom, and I had never really seen a TV brought into a classroom before, so this was a really big thing for us. And we were all watching these astronauts taking off for the moon, and everybody was concentrating on the moon and the moon and the moon. But like Brian said, they had a camera, and what they did with the camera, instead of taking the picture of this moon that everybody was interested in, they turned around and they took a picture of the Earth. Because everything that they knew and loved and every person they loved was on that Earth. And if you were our age, mine and Brian's age around that time, we realized for the first time ever how important our home was. That the whole mission was about the moon. But yet when these guys got to take a picture, they took a picture of the Earth, which was our home. And I think a lot of people at that time started to realize how important our home is. This is the only home we have. So, I apologize for my generation because we didn't leave you the greatest Earth. We left you a pretty dirty place. And the plastics and the garbage and the things that we throw away today. Like I was saying to the young man that's an Eagle Scout, I grew up without a lot of money. We didn't throw things away. We even like this pen now. When this pen runs out of ink, you throw it away. But when I was a kid, if you had a pen, you got the refills and you refilled the inside of the pen and you still had the same thing. But today we've become a throwaway society. We just throw things away in the garbage. Milk in my day used to come in a bottle and it was put outside the door. You took your milk and poured it out of the bottle and you put that milk back outside, that can outside. And the man came and took it away and brought you more milk the next day. It was the greatest thing in the world. No? I didn't think we were paying for it at the time. I thought it was just a miracle. The milk fairy showed up and brought us milk. But I appreciate what you're doing because, my daughters are your age as well. And you're all going to have this Earth. And I hope you do a better job with it than what my generation did. So thank you for your efforts.
And I worked over at the college in Sussex, and our commencement speaker last night spoke on these very topics. But there, Dr. Robert Larson, who's one of our environmental scientists at the college, studied tree frogs and turtles off the coast of Malaysia and spoke to the crowd about the flooding and what was happening to actually the sea creatures and everyone else. So what I'll do is I can get in touch with your teacher, and you guys have an open invitation to the college over there. And Dr. Larson loves speaking with groups of students about this and about his research. So you guys can come over whenever you'd like, meet with Dr. Larson, and I think it'd be a great opportunity. All right.
I just want to congratulate you guys. You're putting together a website and presenting it to the school board like this when you're in elementary school. I think we can expect great things out of you later on in life. So congratulations. Great job.
I just want to say thank you for the cookies. We now know what tax out means.
They were gonna eat it even if they didn't know.
Some of us like cookies.
They did a great job.
Thank you.
Do you know what the Great Barrier Reef is in Australia? Well, see this man, Dr. Bill Hessling over here, he handles all the money in the school. Maybe you can finance a trip.
I'll share on that one.
50% on budget.
We'll do a video.
You were shocked stuff.
Well, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve minutes from the regular board meeting held on April 25th, 2019? So moved. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Being no objection, the motion carries. Reports, student representative report from Ms. Sarah Serrano and Mr. Jose Falcone. Falcon? Is it Falcon or Falcon?
Falcon. Hello. So just now we had AP testing come to a close and we had bio keystones, which are going to be next week. So we just finished English and algebra. And then we had prom happen 2 weeks ago, which was honestly an indescribable experience with after prom and just prom as a whole.
Yeah, prom was really incredible. I mean, I heard from a lot of students that they said it exceeded their expectations, even though they already put $100 payments down to go to it. But yeah, I'd really just like to thank all the administrators, and in particular the administrators like Dr. Blom and Mr. DeLauro and Ms. Costantino, because they really made after prom at Kalahari a possibility.
So moving on to our language department. So we had students place on their national exams, both in Spanish and French. So we had seniors Dave Marcial and Ali place on the national Spanish exam. Dave placed silver nationally and first locally. And then Ali Garcia placed honorable mention nationally and then second locally. And then we also had junior Tara Stevenson, Sam Murray, and Autumn Baker all place nationally and also locally in French classes.
Spring sports. So Thomas Reese won the district AAA title for boys tennis again. The tennis team, they competed today at Kirby Park in the semifinals, right? Yeah. Boys volleyball won districts. They beat Redeemer, wasn't it?
Yeah.
For the first time in a few years. And they're competing right now against Easton for the first round of the playoffs.
Good.
So, yeah, all our spring sports are doing pretty well and getting ready for playoffs. The spring concerts are coming up for jazz band, chorus, and orchestra. So make sure to check your calendars for when those are and don't miss them. And tomorrow afternoon, chorus is having a guest speaker come in to speak to them, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And then just Friday, we had the Senior Citizens Dinner, which is always hosted by junior historians, and they do a fabulous job with it. And then there was a concert later that day as well. And we also have the Senior Science Research Center dinner happening next Thursday. And Mr. Rule and Ms. Hubel are in charge of that. It's for engineering. And then on a different topic, next week on Thursday, May 23rd at 6 p.m., we have the talent show coming up. So you guys should all come. It's $5 for adults and then $3 for students. And then for the newspaper, we are currently working on our 2 final issues. So we have the 9th edition and then our senior edition. So our last edition, they're all in full color. So the 9th one comes out June 7th, and then our senior edition features a bunch of seniors. It has farewells for the writers, and then, just highlights our class as a whole. So that one comes out June 10th. And then also the students in our journalism class, we're going to the Times Herald Record, just a senior trip on June 9th. So it's very exciting for us. And that's everything for this month. But since it's our last meeting, we wanted to do a little special something for you guys just because of our experiences. So we kind of did a little twist on Gloria Gaynor's I Will Survive. So just bear with me through this funny thing. But, yeah, he is, and I'm blushing. Okay. All right. So at first I was nervous. I was petrified. I didn't know what to do without Jose by my side. With all these board meetings, Dr. Blum's encouragement, and all your happy greetings, it made me strong. And reporting school events, I may have taken too long. Now we're going to go out the door. We're sad this is the last board meeting now. Why couldn't there just be one more? We're going to leave here with DB pride and always keep the school spirit alive. Oh, yeah, and thrive. Thank you so much on a better note. Seriously, though. Just wanted to put that out there, though. But, seriously, thank you for such an incredible year. And it couldn't have been possible without Dr. Blum putting in his time to sit with us and discuss important topics, because he's a busy guy as well. And just, all the good times we had with you guys here. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having
You had an amazing year.
Any board meeting to hear what's going on in the school, so thank you for reporting to us.
And thanks for listening to that.
That was awesome.
He was singing though for us. I know, I was going to, but my voice kind of cracks sometimes. So I can redo it. Yeah, I don't have the best voice. Should have got Jose to do it.
There you go.
No, yeah. But thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes.
It's
And
been
we'll see you guys.
very interesting the way that work together to do the reports. You play off of each other, and it's been very interesting. So thank you. You're very energetic. It's great to see.
I think a precedent has been started that all future student representatives at the end of the year by
Sorry.
2020 next year.
Have a good one.
You're really been a ride all year long. Okay. Are there any comments on the administrative reports and attendance reports? Are there any comments on the financial reports? Superintendent's report, Dr. John Bell.
Okay, thank you. I just have a couple of things to mention. Today on the front page of the Scranton Times Tribune were the Scholastic Superstars, which are usually 1 or 2 students per district that get recognized, and they all get invited up to Scranton. And on the front page of the paper were 2 girls from Delaware Valley that were the superstars. Esther Lee and Kiki Ruggiero were both on the front page of the paper, which is really, really cool. We also learned last week that we were identified again by the U.S. News and World Report's Best High Schools in America list. We're in the top 8% of high schools in America. So that's something to be very proud of, to win that again. We're gearing up. The 7 OM teams are leaving for Worlds next week. And then we also have a bunch of national competitions. FBLA, FCCLA, and Scholastic Brisbane all are headed to nationals. And Scholastic is also competing on TV right now against Dallas for the Northeast PA title on WVIA, the PBS station out of Scranton, Wilkes-Barre. So that's it's kind of like a team. For those of you who have never seen it, it's like Team Jeopardy, And so they're doing that tonight, but they'll be headed to nationals soon. Sarah had mentioned boys volleyball. Boys volleyball won the league title and they beat the arch nemesis, Holy Redeemer. You might remember a couple years ago, Holy Redeemer girls had an 88-game win streak, and our girls broke it a year or so ago. Their boys, Holy Redeemer boys, had a 96-game or match streak, and our boys beat it the other night to win the title. Both teams were undefeated. So we beat the nemesis 2 years in a row with boys and girls volleyball, which is great. And if, also, I just wanted to just say a public thank you to everybody for the Special Olympics. It was bigger than it's ever been. There were over 400 athletes and there were over 100 volunteers between adults and all the high school students that give up their day. And it was an amazing day. It really was a really wonderful day. And then since we're going to budget later on, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Billy Hessling. I've always said, he's the best business administrator in Pennsylvania, and we couldn't do it without him. So I want to publicly thank him while everybody was here. That's it. Thank you.
We'll see. They have a motion to accept the treasurer's report.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any no objection, the motion carries. May I have a motion to accept the bills for payment, which include the general fund, cafeteria fund, capital reserve fund, and 2017 construction fund.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no objection, the motion carries. Personnel items. May I have a motion to approve the personnel items, including resignations, appointments, child rearing leaves, extension of bereavement, and change of salary?
Motion?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no objection, the motion carries. We will need to have an executive session to discuss student issue and litigation. May I have a motion to move into executive session?
Motion.
No, there's no discussion. We'll be returning.
Like the only beautiful day of the week. Absolutely.
May I have a motion to move back into regular session?
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, yeah, well, we don't have a discussion, sorry about that. Items for approval, may I have a motion to approve the additional volunteers, see attachment?
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no objection, the motion carries. May I have a motion to approve the request for the waiver of rental fees for the following organizations, subject to approved insurance? The Pike County Developmental Center to use Delaware Valley High School 11-12 cafeteria on September 7th, 2019 for the Tricky Tray at a loss of rental fees of approximately $15.
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no objection, the motion carries. May I have a motion to approve the 2019 graduation class pending completion of graduation requirements? Please see attachment.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Just like to congratulate all those students.
What's the total number?
Do you know offhand? That's all right.
No, magic number.
No, all right, that's all right.
Very low fours.
Yeah.
Okay.
And changing every day.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no objection, the motion carries. May I have a motion to approve the new textbooks for the 2019-2020 school year? Please see attachment.
So moved.
Any
Second.
Sorry. Any discussion?
John, on your list of possible draft reductions, you had a potential additional textbooks for $5,000. Was that these or was that something else?
No, that's if things pop up very early. I'd say some, we have an influx of kids and we need 5 more of this or 3 more of that. That's where we need them.
Thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no objection, the motion carries. May I have a motion to approve the change orders for the CTE addition and renovation project as listed? Total amount of $54,928.26.
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
Yeah. We keep
Couldn't
seeing.
we have anticipated some of this during the planning stages? It just seems like there's a lot here.
Yeah, Margaret, a question in particular was Margaret could talk to you about. Some of the things are older things that now we decided to change. Because you got ugly old things right up against brand new things where the buildings mesh.
Are these like cosmetic we want to upgrade how it looks, or these are like things that may be falling apart that we want to
Yeah, like the
fix?
last one, the 2 cabinet unit heaters in the corridor,
Mhm.
that's right where they blew through the wall. There's heaters there in the hallway and they're old and they're leaking, right? Yeah, they're old and leaking, so when Marvin saw that they were leaking, he said we should probably replace them now, as opposed to in the building and having these old things leaking onto the floor. So they weren't part of the original project because they weren't leaking like 2 years ago when we spec'd everything.
Where are we at then, like with our total? I mean, I know we had not a contingency fund, but we had extra money built in, for things that, change orders and things like that. But I know the last couple of months we've had quite a few significant amounts.
We're up to $286,000 worth of change orders, and we had 480 built in when the original budget was produced.
We used 67 of that remaining 200. So we're out of that. That's about 130 so.
So how close do we think we are to stop seeing these?
Well, the good news is next week we're moving into the new wing. Yes, I mean, they were putting drop ceilings in and they finished it, they were doing the tile floor, so we're actually moving into the new wing next week. So that's a great sign because that's a sign that,
We're actually doing some moving this weekend. and the 24th in schools closed, they moved everything but manufacturing, tech manufacturing. This is, the equipment involved, we have to wait to do that during the summer.
So you're not foreseeing too many more here, Marvin, going forward?
Yeah, I mean, the good news is from a global standpoint, we're only about 50% of the which leaves 50%. Minus was moved here.
The only thing I see on there that we probably could have seen ahead of time is the $1,186 for the emergency hot wash station in the science room. We should have listened. You know, that's minor, very minor, insignificant to me. Supply ducts for the dust collection room 179. More dust you collect, the less problems we're gonna have with the other stuff, and we don't really have a bunch of that stuff. We really have a problem with that stuff. Because everybody understands we can't use those kind of things happen. But are we okay with the kitchen area now, Marvin? There's no unforeseen stuff coming out of there.
There's still a lot of work to be done. I don't want to.
That's the one place that is far behind everything else, because when we moved the health occupation kids across the hall, we tore the health occupations floor out, because that's gonna become the kitchen, so you have to go over floor drains and all that. They import that floor? Yeah, not yet. So that floor hasn't been poured, but it's been dug up and put all the new drains in, but then before it's going to the floor. But that's the remaining pieces, and just realistically, everybody will be in next week. You know, we were talking August, but everybody will be in by next week except for the wood shop up in the corner and the culinary. Everybody else is in, so we're way ahead of schedule. So that's good news too, because the more you have done, and the less likely you're gonna have more, so reduce the chances of change.
And what about the stuff for the hostess station? Just, not that I'm concerned about it, I just wanna know what it is. Provide cabinets and modified gypsum soffit for addition of a hostess station. I guess that's in the cafeteria as a hostess station?
Oh, that would be in the dining room.
In the dining room
Of the
area.
culinary.
Problem. Okay, all those in favor, is there any other discussion on that? Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any no objection, the motion carries. May I have a motion for the recommendation of bid awards as listed 1 through 11?
Motion, second.
Any discussion?
Everything in line, Bill, all the bids came in.
Yeah, similar to last year. I mean, they've been pretty consistent for the types of things that are purchased.
Is there any further discussion on this? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any no objection, the motion carries. All right, here we go. Before we get to this, I want to correct something that was done 2 years ago, where we didn't allow people to comment beforehand. And this is a Board of Education meeting that is open to the public. What it's not defined as is a public meeting open to the Board of Education. So when we discuss things, there's a difference legally terms between discussion and debate, comment and discussion. Discussion is a back and forth debate. A comment is just that, make a comment on it. So there was a confusion a few years ago with a member of the audience, and I was trying to do it one way, and perhaps I was unfair to him. I don't know. I thought at the time I was fair, but in retrospect, maybe I wasn't. So tonight we're going to correct that. Is that a member of the public would like to comment on the budget?
Motion and second.
Okay. I want to keep comments separate from discussion. Okay, may I have a motion to approve the proposed final adoption of the 2019-2020 Delaware Valley School District General Fund budget reflecting a 2.84% tax increase at a millage rate of 113.85 mils with a balanced budget of revenues and expenditures of $84,060,228.
Motion?
Second.
And public comment on this. And the elephant is over there.
Can we comment?
Public first.
Public first?
Yes.
Because I thought there might be an opportunity to get a little bit of background. All right.
Public comment.
I'll make a comment. Thank you, Jack. I appreciate your comments very much. My name is Jack Fisher. I own properties in 2 states, 5 different properties. It is here in Delaware Valley where my home and my businesses are that I get the best bang for my buck. No doubt about it. Cost per student is incredibly low compared to everyone else. So I just want to say how much I support 2.84%. And of course, as we go forward, I hope you all will support it. But thanks, Jack. I appreciate your comments very much.
Well, Jack, if I was unfair to you, it was I'm just trying to do something, you know?
I always yield to the president, so you're fine with me.
I know you didn't take it personally, and I did not mean to be unfair to you, but in case I was, I sincerely apologize. But I wanted to make sure I got you first. Any other comment from the public? Yes, sir.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to be in a room with so many people that care about kids.
Excuse me, just have to state your name.
Yeah, Andrew Murata. I'm a Milford resident since '05, and I'm your neighbor across the way, the principal of Port Jervis High School. So I was going to say, it's nice to be in a room full of professionals that care about kids and have passion for kids, and my kids are in this community. Many of you coach and work with my children directly, so I appreciate that. I'm here to support the 2.84 budget, and for a lot of reasons, starting with the old adage of, you get what you pay for. This money is needed to continue to help our programs grow, our staff grow, and our facilities grow. Before this, I just ran your loop out here. There's new grass seed down, there's new things down. It's nice to be here because the things look nice. Listening to the change orders. Dr. Bell was nice enough to take Port Jervis over there and show us the great work that's being done, which is tremendous. And as a community member here, I think it's great. My kids are little, and I'm looking forward to them going into that wing. Specifically, I'm here to advocate for things in Shahola where my kids go. My kids in 4th grade, if anyone was at the concert last night, they were falling off the stage, literally in the curtain, because there's so many kids. There's only 3 sections, and the levels are in the 30s. Mr. Homer read the what do you call it? The mission statement to start the meeting, maximize student potential. That's difficult when you have 30 4th graders in a passion, So I hope that budget will support another section there specifically. And just like us across the river, I know there's a ton of needs with mental health and special ed services. That money's for our kids and programs. And I think it would be good to support that. So I want to say that. And my kid is out here right now, so I don't want to speak and run, but I do have to go. I appreciate the comments. Appreciate the work. All right. Thank you. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Anyone else in the public?
I'd like to say something. My name is Lynn Frinzing. I live in Shahola as well. I am the PTA president there at Shahola, and I have 3 children in the school system, one at DV Middle and 2 in Shahola. I also work in the schools. I'm an instructional assistant at Shahola. So I just want to thank you guys for all your hard work. I know coming to this budget, it's a lot of compromises and a lot of hard work, so I just really appreciate it. I also want to throw my support in for it. The increase, I have a 4th grader going to pick his, I think actually has 33 kids in his class room. And, he's an average student that just with a little guidance can be an above average student. It's very hard when you have a teacher who's handling so many children in a classroom, especially children when you have different IEPs going on and so many different mix, which I totally support the inclusion effort, but it does take a lot of attention at times. So I just really ask that you consider that as you make your vote. Also, I work with the special ed department in the MDS room at Shahola, and so I am led to believe that some of these changes might affect our staffing in that room. And I would love to walk you through an hour of my day in that room. It's a tough job that we love. I love the students; they're so inspiring to me, and they really struggle just to get through each moment. And they really need staff to be by their side. And it's a draining job to have. And it can be beautiful and wonderful, but you, in 1 hour, will get thrown up on, you're changing a diaper, you have a girl who's hitting herself constantly when she's frustrated, and every time she hits herself, you feel like you're the one hitting her because you haven't stopped it, or you haven't predicted it, or you haven't, you know, done the work to really prevent it from happening, you know? So it's a pressure job, and I just would love to see more help in it for those students, for all the students. Thank you so much.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
What led you to believe that we were interested in cutting staff?
Well, I just heard, well, I was led to believe that if they were not going to approve this, that one of the things, I was given a list of things that might be cut, and one of them was elementary
Who gave
education.
you this list?
Jack, is what we talked about last meeting, the autistic support.
Yes.
That's probably what you're talking
Yeah. In the special ed, so.
It was on the calendar.
We're looking to finance to do more. I was in that school. I was in it with Dr. Bell a month ago. I counted 32 heads in that fourth grade class. What I understand, the manager, whose name I cannot remember, is like one of the senior teachers. I understand when Mrs. Bixby is out of the school, he actually takes over. He's the second in charge. Yes, that's his name. He had a great handling of that classroom. He had a great handling of that classroom.
Well, this
Yeah,
year.
hold on. But he was right there. And when he did turn and talk to myself and Dr. Bell, that handling went away. Now, what happens when that man gets sick? What happens when that man's absent? What happens? What person is gonna come in as a substitute and be able to do what a senior teacher could do? What's gonna happen when that classroom moves on next year? That was the first thing we said. We need to fix this situation. And myself and John, as we were walking out to the parking lot, he was telling me how he was planning on fixing this. I don't understand we're looking to add that. At least I am.
I'm glad to hear that.
But we need to be able to finance these things. You know,
That's why
because
we're
we're an educational facility first. Before we're anything else, we're an educational facility first. So I do want to finance that stuff. But we gotta finance education first. Which is your staff.
Right.
Yeah, it is education.
Thank you for coming, I appreciate it. So any other comments from the public?
I'd like to make one.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Angela Lampo, and I have 3 boys in the school district. Just a little background, one of my boys has an IEP, one has a 504 plan, and the other is straight regular ed. Although we're not in Chihuahua, I still really support the tax increase. I think it's needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Going once, twice. Yes, ma'am.
Hi everyone, my name is Elena Nateki. I am 2 children in the district, and I'm also professor of early childhood and child education at Mercy College. And I support the increase because I know how important education is, and that class size really, really does matter. There's so many decades and so many studies of research demonstrating the positive correlation between smaller class size and better student outcomes, better reading scores, better well-being of the children, and just so many other things that are important for our children. And if you want to maintain that top 8% of high schools, you've got to start in the lower grades and get them ready when they're young children, early childhood and elementary, and set a really good foundation with a meaningful relationship with the teacher, that they are able to support them, support their needs. And it's not easy to do that when you're anywhere above 25, 30 kids in a classroom, especially many of whom have special needs. So I do support this, and I thank you for your time.
Anyone else? Going once, going twice, 3 times. We have the motion, we have the second. Is there any discussion amongst the board?
I'd like to say something, Jack. Will the public be able to, they still have an opportunity if something comes up, right?
That's the public comment, Brian. This is the discussion.
All right.
Robert's Rules of Order state that we have to discuss.
Well, my
We follow
question
Robert's
was,
Rules of Order here.
is there any follow-up opportunity for the public?
Yes, it's a 30-day period that starts right after we vote. They can comment all they want after that.
All right, well, if I have the floor, let me just say, I wrote a few comments down this morning, and I thought, well, since we do have some parents here who aren't at every budget meeting, that I would write some things down for our review, but mostly for the people who are here tonight from the public. So, good evening to all of you in attendance. During the past 3 months, the school board has reviewed the proposed budget for the 2019-2020 school year. Last week at a work session meeting, there appeared to be agreement on a 2.84% school tax increase. Now, we all know minds can change in a week's time, plus there are the interested parents and community members in the audience, so I'd like to briefly review some of the basic budgetary information. To begin with, let me say that I strongly support the proposed 2.84% increase, and I urge my fellow board members to vote in favor of it. So let's consider these facts. Number one, for 7 of the past 11 years, the Delaware Valley School District has had 0% annual increase. That is to say, for 7 of the past 11 years, there has been no tax increase at all. This was possible for some very specific reasons that included, for instance, one-time increases in state funding, one-time federal stimulus funding, salary freezes over several years, and changes in student demographics matched by staff retirements that were not replaced. In short, the circumstances that permitted a 0% tax increase were irregular and are unlikely to be available to us in the next several years. There is no revenue source coming to us that will permit DV to forego a tax increase. The only way to reduce the budget this year is to cut it. Secondly, I am opposed to any further budget cuts. The DV budget is as lean as it can be without doing detriment to our educational mission. Consider this. Of the 13 school districts surrounding us here in Pennsylvania, DV has the lowest cost per pupil, nearly $5,000 less per pupil than the nearby districts at the higher end of the local student spending. In addition, nationally, DV's cost per pupil is between 10% and 30% below the national average. And let's compare increases in the DV budget to other economic indicators between 2007 and 2019. The cumulative rise in the Social Security cost of living adjustment, the COLA, over those 12 years is 21.7%. The consumer price index over those 12 years has risen at a total of 22.2%. The Base Act 1 index, which is the amount the state of Pennsylvania thinks we might need to raise school taxes, has gone up a cumulative 41.8% over those 12 years. Compare all this to 11.41%. That's the cumulative tax increase that we have had since 2007. Let me say it again, 11.41%, which is essentially 1/2 of the Social Security COLA amount, half of the Consumer Price Index, and 1/4 of what the state of Pennsylvania thinks a school district like ours might have needed. This year's Act 1 index, what the state thinks we might need, is 3.1%. Under the careful planning of Dr. Bell and the administrative staff in all of our schools, and the wise fiscal guidance of our business manager, Bill Hessling, the DV budget was reduced by over $1 million below that 3.1%, taking the proposed increase down to 2.8%. So make no mistake, even with the increase, this is a lean budget. There is no waste. There is no fat. This budget is Marie Osmond on Nutrisystem. After sipping on a chocolate Creighton Crusher shake. There is no fat, it's all muscle. And while I'd like to tell you that it's muscle like a young Arnold Schwarzenegger pumping iron, I'm worried that it's becoming more like a skinny kid on the beach. And if we aren't careful, it'll turn into a skeleton of a budget in the years ahead. But let me be clear, I hate paying taxes. Every year I have to look around at what the taxes are used for and be certain I'm getting a good deal. I've been on this board now for 4 years. I'm a homeowner, a taxpayer, and a parent of 2 children, and here's what I see. In northeastern Pennsylvania, there is no better deal than the Delaware Valley School District. The taxes are already at record lows. The education our children get is consistently ranked among the best in Pennsylvania and among the best throughout the United States, as we heard about the U.S. News report just earlier tonight. It's why young families move here. The quality and reputation of our school district is a major factor in determining our property values. Look around. Excellent facilities, including a new elementary school and state-of-the-art career tech training center. Top-notch teachers, so that every child gets the education and support that helps each of them the most. Simply put, this school district is what we've got going for us. A 2.84% increase will cost the average assessed home just shy of $80 per year, or $6.63 per month. This increase will keep us on an even keel financially. It will allow us to address issues in class size. It will allow us to maintain our autistic support and special education programs, as we talked about last week. It will allow us to plan for building maintenance. Excuse me one sec. Look at the news. The national economy is strong, with a 3.2% growth in the gross domestic product. The unemployment rate is at a record low, and wages are rising faster and better than they have in over a decade. If we have to raise taxes, now is the time to do it. And if we don't do it now, we will have to do it later. We all know this. We will do it later, it will cost more, and the discomfort will be far greater. We need to do the right thing as a board. This increase is eminently reasonable. We were elected to take care of the school district, to protect the taxpayers' investment, to provide for our children and our community, and to maintain the quality of education and the reputation of our schools. And if we fail in this, if we fail to pass this eminently reasonable tax increase, the financial condition of the Delaware Valley School District will be weakened. And our best community asset, this thing we have going for us, will be diminished, because we tonight will have taken a decisive step down the path of mediocrity. Instead, as Jack Fisher likes to say, I say we keep DV strong. So I ask my fellow board members to vote in favor of the proposed 2.84% increase. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion?
In the past, I vociferously supported no tax increases. I think that when I first got on the board, there was $2.1 million the first year that I was appointed in surplus. I think that we've done a very good job of reducing any areas where we were not being as fiscally conservative and responsible as I think that we could have been. And I think that I will probably surprise a couple people tonight when I say that not only do I think that we do need a tax increase, but I also don't think that the positions that we have in the budget are enough for the students that we have in our classes. I think that I know that we last year had a discussion. I know that we reduced by attrition the class, or we increased the class sizes out at Dingman's. So not only do I think that the Shahola fourth grade class is high, but last year, you know, we were at 29 kids in those classes when we agreed to not, we said that we didn't need to hire another teacher for those classes. Well, our Dingman's second and third grade classes this year are at 27 kids in a classroom. And a couple more kids moving into those classes make it even higher. And that's what happened at Shahola. We were at 29 and now we're at 32, 33. So I think that we, in addition to what's in the budget, I think we need an additional teacher for Dingman's. And I also think that as far as special education is concerned, I think that we need looking at Maria's special ed plan that was submitted to the state. And I met with Maria and Pam, and we went through this special ed plan at length. And I said at the time that I was very concerned about some of our learning support class sizes. Our learning support class sizes out at Dingman's are low, not low, but are reasonable. I think most of our class sizes in those classes at most of our schools are between 16, 17, 18. But those class sizes at Shahola are at 24. So 24 learning support kids are on a roster. Not only that, but we are going to be using part of our emotional support teacher. So that emotional support teacher will be a half-time emotional support teacher and a half-time learning support teacher. So when that teacher has a student in their classroom that has a meltdown, and needs the support of that teacher will not be able to go and leave that student to go and work with their learning support students. So I do think that we have whittled the budget down. I think that we've done a good job of looking at the areas that we have consistently been underspent and reducing those areas of the budget. But I do think that you're correct in saying that now is the time for a budget increase or a tax increase. And like I said, I also believe that we do need to increase those positions by a position and a half. We have to put a teacher out of Digman's, and we have to put a half-time learning support teacher at Chihuahua. And I realize that, now we have a 2.84 on the table, so I'm not sure exactly. I don't know Robert's Rules of Order. I'm not going to lie and pretend that I do. But I think that, so we either need to reduce by $128,000, or I think that we need to look at our proposed tax increase. I think that there are, I would support eliminating the library contribution. I think that while it's wonderful that we're supporting the library, I think that if it comes down to giving $25,000 to the library, or that half-time learning support teacher is about $28,000. So if it comes down to giving $25,000 to the library or putting a person in our classrooms with our students, I say that we put a teacher in our classrooms with our students. So that's the first area that I would cut. I think that looking at the online student registration, I think that's great. But again, that's not putting a body in the classroom and educating our students, which is our number one priority. I think that all of these other areas are great, but our job is to educate our students. And the number one way we can educate and help our students is by making sure that the class sizes that when they go into school, that their class sizes are reasonable for them to learn.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Yes, Jack. Under this budget, our expenses are going up 2.58% from the previous year. Our expenses increased the year before that, but we had no tax increase. The point I'm trying to make is that you can't keep increasing your expenses without increased revenues. We're getting very little in the way of increased revenue from the state, getting almost nothing in the way of increased revenue from the federal government. It is clear that in this school district, the lion's share of what we have to come up with to support our schools comes from local taxation. But I'm speaking in support of the 2.84. I think it is vitally needed for the financial stability of the school district.
Thank you, John. So far, I really like this. We are keeping with Robert's Rules of Order. Somebody has the floor. There's no cross-talking. There's no interruptions. I appreciate that very much. It's very professional. We all have different views. Some of us have similar views, but I think it's very nice that we're respectful of those views and everyone's conscious. So thank you so far. Is there any other discussion? Okay.
I said everything last week that where I was. I think we've taken, excess, similar to what Jessica said, we've taken excess money and we've effectively given it back to the taxpayer through a zero. But once we give back $800,000 of excess money, what we considered excess money in the funds based on the Auditor General's report, you now are starting the next year automatically in that hole. And going off of everything that we have from Bill and where we start each year. So in other words, when we balance our budget by taking cash out of an account that was sitting there, you're automatically starting the next year in that hole. Then you add the teachers' contracts and the percentages on top of that. And we're looking at, where was it? Expenditure increase, and I think this changed a little bit, but over $2 million. A 1% tax increase is equal to 450,000? 457?
Yeah.
So we're not even, with this increase, meeting what our expenditures are, and part of that is because of additional teachers and attrition and different things that they've been able to lower. I just don't think it's responsible to go without a tax increase this year. And quite frankly, what you bring up with the teachers, with specific to learning support and whatnot, I wish we had heard about that in those presentations last month, the month before. It's kind of upsetting that we're hearing about that now and we have to do the digging.
Well, it's not too late. You can make those adjustments now.
I mean, I agree kind of with all the comments. We need some sort of tax increase this year. But as a stats guy, I just want to pull out some things. Because we've used the 11 years as, I don't know why we use 11 years as our benchmark traditionally. But if we narrow that timeline down, in the last 6 years, we've raised taxes 4 times, 9.5% over those 6 years. With this increase, it'll be up to 11.5%, right around there. And within the last 6 years, we are over the Social Security COLA by 1% in the last 6 years. So while I agree that we need to do something, I just want everybody here for disclosure for everybody. That's all right. I just want everybody to be aware of that here, because we do throw out that 11 number.
I apologize.
Hey, we love you. Tell them no anchovies on
And you know what? It's an appetizer.
It's pork service pizza, no anchovies.
I'm sorry.
It's all right.
But yeah, as I was saying, I mean, we do use the 11-year mark for some sort of baseline, but as I said, in recent past, we're up to 9.5%, while we've dropped in pupil size 300. So while I agree we need some sort of tax increase to balance the budget, I think moving forward as a district, we just need to be smarter in how we are spending our money, because the revenue is not going to always be there. You know, we can't continue to go back and back and back. 9.5 over 6 years, that's tough. You know, that's really tough for some families that live in this area, that grew up in this area. And the Pike County, I mean, think about the unemployment rate nationally, 3.2% is excellent. Yeah, but Pike County's 5.5% still. You know, so thinking back to our local community, our local businesses, while it's only $98 to a family per year, that's thousands to some of our local businesses. So again, while I do agree we need some sort of increase to help balance out these class sizes, because I work in education, I'm a big supporter of education. I just want us to be weary moving forward that we just need to be smarter in how we are spending that money. So.
Thank you, Corey. Any other discussion?
Yeah. I spent a little bit of time going over the draft possible additional reductions paper. Like I said last week, I don't want to touch the budgetary reserve. I don't want to touch the elementary teacher or the special ed teacher. I was looking at the amounts below that, and I know they're much smaller amounts. If I remember correctly, the Pike County Library contribution, I had asked about the grant that they got for us, and that grant was for how much money?
I think it was 7,000.
But they have to get that.
No, they don't have to apply.
No, they don't get the
To get the grant.
Right.
So I think they're.
But if they decide they don't want to put in the effort to do the grant, they don't have to do the grant.
Sure.
Okay?
The bulk of that goes towards a database in the high school for students, a peer-reviewed EBSCO database that we would typically pick up. We didn't get that.
What would that price be for that database?
It's about 5,800.
Okay.
And we're looking at money towards DDETV.
I mean, my thing was, I mean, the budget is 25,000. I would say give them a portion of their grant back. Rather than that could, say we gave them $5,000 back. Or we put $5,000 in the budget for the library. That would put $20,000 right there. What I'm hearing is the interest net, I've talked to some parents and they say it's very hard to navigate. They don't feel that it's necessary to spend $16,000 on that. The PSSA testing breakfast, they just had it. I'm wondering if we really need $12,500 or if we could cut it back to say $10,000. Like, I'm not cutting things, I'm just kind of paring them down a little bit. The Kindred Spirits music program, does it really need $10,000? Can we cut it down to $5,000? The DARE supplies, could we cut it from 7,500 to 5,000? You see what I'm saying? Just little pieces at a time. I'm not exactly sure of what the communications and public relations is used for, so I didn't do anything with that. I was actually at the teacher appreciation lunch today in Chipola, And everybody thanked me, so we're not gonna touch the teacher appreciation. And it was very good, thank you very much. They were all thanking me, and I was like, you're welcome, you know? I'll give the credit to the board and everybody else, they really loved it. When it comes down to the athletic specialists and clinicians, Chris Ross was really great. He got me the ratio of coaches to participants in the athletics. And I really think that the number of coaches that we have for the number of students, the number of participants, is sufficient without needing those specialists. And if there's a specific area in sports that they need to focus on, then I think one of those coaches needs to go out and get themselves trained in that. So that would be $35,200 right there. With the drug testing, I believe it was, you said about 10% are tested during the course of the year. If we only tested 5% of them, I think you said that it was $30,000 for that. That would cut it to $15,000, and it has the same effect of it's random. They don't know who it's going to be, so it would continue to be a deterrent, but it would save us some money. The amount that I came up with was that would be $94,800, which could pay for the teacher that Jessica wants up in Dignans. And I'm looking at the numbers here. Right now it's 26.8, which is 27 kids in a class. And we saw what happened in Chihola. We don't have a crystal ball. 5 kids could move out of that building as easily as move in. But I would rather err on the side of caution and have an average of 23 kids in those classes, because they've got 6 or 7 classes. So it's not like they only have 3 sections. You divide that among 7 classes, and it isn't as dramatic a drop as hiring that third kindergarten teacher was last August.
Right, but we're not talking about actually filling that teacher, because I thought we were filling that teacher by moving
We're not
staff.
cross-talking either, please let me. Thank you.
I believe that the positions that we had in the budget were not including that position. Am I correct in that? Virginians.
Oh, Virginians, I'm sorry, I'm thinking
No,
Chihola.
I'm sorry, Virginians. So that's just, like I said, none of it is big bucks in any one area, but it was just little things that if you pick away at it, we've got another teacher. Thank you.
So that's for the Damons.
In
fourth
my
grade,
mind,
not
when
Chihola.
Jessica mentioned that, no, that's not Chihola, that's a new position for Dignans to lower that class size. And we can watch those 2 classes. I believe it's, the 3rd grade and 4th grade next year in Dingdale Elementary. We can keep an eye on that, and whichever class we think needs it the most come August, because we all know things change between now and August. We can decide at a later date where we want to put that body, but at least we have the body. And we're not in August saying, oh gee, that class has gotten really big, we need to do something now. Thank you.
Now, that doesn't do anything for the higher numbers in this.
So we're at a 2.84 now with an extra teacher, so we're looking at needing $28,000. So Bill, come on.
A new teacher for 20?
No, a halftime learning sport. I need $28,000. What can you do for me? It's an $84 million budget. We can find $28,000.
Let's talk real numbers.
Yeah.
If the real number would be like 35 with benefits and change.
Well, they wouldn't get benefits because they're a halftime.
No, wage, attached to wages, not. You pretty much have to add about 18% as the net cost of top of the salary. But that's like so 35.
These are Social Security, that stuff.
You got Social Security and you have retirement, that would.
Yeah.
So basically 35, so.
Okay.
I mean, from some of the lists that Rosemary just said, you're talking specifically just 35,000 right now. John and I could go through this list and tweak or whatever and come up with where we feel would be the.
So we could do a 2.84% tax increase, and with giving the library only 5,000, getting rid of the info snap and some of the other items that Rosemary said. I also think that Corey had mentioned there's some one-time, using last year's budgetary reserves for any one-time costs.
Yeah, I mean.
Could we find $35,000 there?
If we're not thinking about using the budgetary reserve for this year, is there any one-time cost next year? I mean, I think that Chris Lodi had some supplies and things like that weren't necessarily reoccurring every year if you did.
I know we've done that before, and I think we have the I'm concerned about this year's. I believe there's not going to be much of a surplus. I know we have more retirees than expected. They cost you money in the year you're in.
Right.
Um,
So do you think we'll dip into our budgetary reserve?
I am expecting to come to the board to move the 150,000 budgetary reserve at the June meeting to severance pay for teachers.
We budgeted for 7 retirees and had what, 12?
Yeah, so that's
Understood.
so I don't believe that's an option. I mean, if we're talking just changing the 2.84 by $35,000, then I recommend tweaking this list and, whether you go, I mean, I kind of, before, like, some of the things here, like Lake County Library, for example, I mean, there's been a lot of time put into that, but I mean, I don't know where 5 board members stand as far as whether they want that touched or not touched. I don't know. Do you all want to continue with all this list? You know what I mean? I know Rosemary spoke, but I mean, if you want to take $35,000 and leave it, John, in my hands, or are people passionate about certain things, and are 5 of you passionate enough about wanting to dictate what's going on with this list? I think.
We can give you some input too. The necessary testing that was started back in the day before we had a breakfast program. So everything is different now because the kids that eat breakfast get breakfast every day. And the kids who don't eat breakfast get it at home. That 12.5 or something that we looked at. The 7,000 for communications PR, because we're not gonna farm anything out because we're doing it all internally with our self-chairs. And that 5,000 for the additional textbooks, that's 24,500. And then from below the line, we can take money from below the line too. Between a combination of open positions and possible underspending on state and national competitions, we can get there to help you get to whatever you're trying to get.
This 2.84, John, it doesn't eliminate anything on that list.
Right. Those things are
So
also.
if the board goes ahead, we're gonna have to vote on this. And if the board goes ahead with the 2.84 number of those positions,
Everything on
the
this.
coaches are in, the libraries in, yeah. That's just-
So, but how do we get, I was just gonna say, but I'm saying to eliminate some of those things so that, because I would rather get a teacher in the classroom and a half-time learning support. So I am proposing to get rid of some of those things so that we can get, I mean, at some point, we need the money for, I believe, for I think we need a teacher in Dingman's and we need to learn
As
Spanish.
Jess was talking, I was just scratching, if you, correct me if you got anything to think. But I was just scratching, trying to quickly doing the math, with 1% being 457. If you added a teacher for Dingman's and you added a half teacher for Shahola for learning support, that would take you up to 3.10 or 3.11. And then to get it back down below 3, 2.99, you'd have to cut about another 50, you'd have to cut about 55,000. Well, those 3 things I told you we don't need are 24,500, and we get another 25 grand down below.
Okay. What we're gonna do here is we're gonna vote, again, Robert's Rules of Order. We're gonna vote on the 2.84% in a minute when everybody's finished discussing. If you do not like that 2.84, the way it's structured, you want your teacher and you want some things going out, I would suggest you vote no on this. And then in other business, we're gonna go through the rest of this agenda and get it out of here. The budget has to get done. We're gonna bring it up in other business. It's gotta be brought up with a number. It's gotta have a first. It's gotta have a second. It's gotta have a motion and a second in order to have discussion. Somebody's gonna have to come up with a number or something in order to discuss.
So let me just clarify,
That's what we're gonna do.
with the work that you're going to do, the 2.84 gives us the teacher from Dingman's and learning support, half part-time learning support, with what you're gonna go and eliminate, correct?
Well, no, by adding.
Maybe I misunderstood. I thought I missed something. So
Okay.
is it
Yeah, that's
35,000
clear.
or is it a teacher, full teacher?
Well,
plus
it was
35,000?
the things that Rosemary was talking about
Rosemary.
cutting, plus then we needed
Yeah.
35,000 beyond that.
Rosemary took care of the full-time teacher, now we're doing the learning support, part-time teacher.
But this that we put on from the work session, from the agenda, is representative of not cutting anything that Dr. Bell has on that list. That's what was done at the work session. That's when we put this on the agenda. So this represents that budget. And in order to change that, we have to have a proposal for the new budget. That's why Well,
it's a number, it's the percentage.
It's not the same budget. It's not
Now,
the
it
same
seems to
budget.
me if we vote on the 2.84%, then we have that threshold. And then we could still work on the
Yes.
particulars.
You would have to you would have to ask for a motion to do that, get a second, and we can
But
discuss
only
it.
if it's a different number,
It's a
correct?
different budget. This budget represents that list. This budget here, this 2.84, represents not cutting that list that's in there. We're not cutting the specialists, we're not cutting the library, we're not doing any of that.
Can you provide guidance, Ashley? Because
No, I've never.
I'm just trying to keep order here, folks. You all want to follow Robert's Rules of Order. If you want to follow it, we'll follow it. If the 8 of you say throw it out the door, we can throw the whole book out the door, even the one for dummies, the long one. We can throw it out the door. It's up to you. I'm just saying.
Discussion.
Yes, John.
So this is a proposed final budget. We passed the final budget at the end of June. We could pass the 2.84 tonight. During our work session, we could look at modifications so we can afford the extra teacher and a half, which I'm in favor of. And whatever adjustments we have to make can be reflected in the final budget.
The only, the only objection, myself and Ashley, I had to call over this evening for some legal questions on matters. And I did discuss myself personally, just as myself here, and I have a problem with putting out a budget of anything for tomorrow morning with a 30-day commentary, and then people commenting on it with my intention that I'm gonna switch this at the next meeting. I don't think that's telling people straight out. I would rather see a budget come out tonight. Myself and Ashley, we were trying to figure out when the last time that was changed. When we actually changed, I think it was 3 years ago at the final budget. Do you remember, John? When we actually?
Actually, I was talking to, we were trying to
Yeah, I think it was
remember which
3
year
years
it was, yeah.
I think it was not last year. Last year, there was the zero that you guys had come to beforehand. Year before that was an increase. Year before that, I believe the proposed final budget was with an increase, and then it was changed to a zero prior. But I think what we were talking about with the changes earlier was more so if the number changes. But I think the board is on hand that the number, they want that number to be the same. It would just be tweaks in how you get to that.
Because this is not going on public display. I mean, that's not part of the budget that, the proposed
Oh,
final budget.
Bill has to
So,
fill in the numbers, and that goes public display, right? You have to fill
Right.
in all the columns and the numbers.
Yeah, what's in the packet tonight
Mhm.
is what will go to, has to be on the Pennsylvania Department of Education form, and then available for the public for 30 days.
Right.
However, that can be changed up or down, when you go to the June meeting.
So even if you didn't want to change the tax rate and millage rate, but you would approve, that's the two things you're approving tonight.
Mhm.
Is the 2.84 and the millage rate. At the June work session, you can make change, you can fool around then of swapping things if you want, whether it changes your rate or not. You're allowed to do that.
And then I would be submitting those with the changes, like, for example, if 10,000 came out of here, it went to salary, for example, then those would have to be reflected in that final version of the budget.
Right. Yeah.
That's, we have that tradition, but there have been times you put a number out there and then it is different the next time. As long as we have it on public display.
But he's gotta call it what it is tonight. And so as of tomorrow morning, he's gotta call it. We can't say this money's going to teachers and then switch it to tables and chairs and teas and coffees. We have to call it what it is for tonight. That's what he's charged with doing.
That's not what I'm hearing.
And then we switch it.
No, but can I,
We can vote on the number and then modify how we spend the budget. But we should vote on I mean, to ask Bill and John, I mean, just as a practical matter, to, rewrite a budget items as we sit here tonight is foolhardy. I mean, I think if we vote on the 2.84%, then we know what our threshold is. We know the amount we have to work with, and then we make these adjustments to, these various things it sounds to me like that's what you're saying. We can modify how we spend, as long as we determine tonight
You could put a
what we're going to
for
spend.
out there and the public can know, either by press or whatever, that there is going to be continued discussion on potential staffing change.
My question for you, fellas, so you have to report it as tomorrow, when you put out the budget for the Thursday coming, you have to put everything in the right column. Right, that?
Yeah,
Yes.
in your book there, if you were to make changes as we're sitting here tonight, I would have to make those changes tonight.
And then if we change it next month, you have to go make those changes again. Okay, so I was correct. Thank you very much.
I think everybody's correct, then, okay.
So I just want to make it clear that if I vote on the 2.84, we are gaining one teacher at Dingman's and a part-time teacher at Shahola, correct? Voting on the 2.84 will not change going forward, those
That's it.
positions.
That's if it, when you guys sit down and do a work session, that we make other cuts to offset that, because they're not in, that position and a half weren't in the 2.4.
It's based on the cuts that we're entrusting to you. Okay, but I'm not voting on something if we're not gonna have that
And the other thing too
teacher
is,
and.
you all get to vote again, so if you don't like what it looks like the next time, you can easily vote yes this time and no next, or vice versa. You know, if you vote no this time, but you like the changes that are made between now and June, then you're not obligated to vote the same way both times, it gives you a second shot at it. You don't like the way it flushes out.
Then I would say if you were to vote for a 2.84 tonight, based on something that may happen, you would need to know that you would have the support of 4 other members, 5 people to do that happen. But if you vote for 2.84 tonight, before we start switching things around, because not everybody's gonna wanna cut everything that everybody wants, you're gonna have to have 5 people. There's no guarantee.
Right, but I'm leaving it up to them. I'm entrusting
It's
you.
not up to them, it's up to us, though.
Well,
We need
that
5
they're
votes.
going, no, we've just asked them to go into that list and decide what stays and what doesn't, because we're not sitting here doing it now. We have in the past sat here for hours at times and done that work. But we are saying we're entrusting you to do that, knowing that we are gonna gain 1.5 teachers.
But maybe not all of us agree.
Just so we all understand.
But maybe not all of us
If we
agree,
don't
but-
agree, you don't vote for it, but just so I know what I'm voting for.
And what we could do if you want is we can go back and work on it so that the position and a half is in and make recommendations of what things we would then cut around the periphery so that we can have that. If you guys don't like it, you can change anything up, but at least it would speed the process up to give you a draft version of what that would look like, I guess. So
If I can just.
Okay, do we have any other discussion? Yes,
I'm
you're
fine
right,
with
nice,
that.
go ahead.
Before, thank you, Jack. I want to make sure that everyone understands, if you're following Robert's rules, we have a motion and a second for the budget as we see it in front of us. So our first vote will be on exactly what we see in front of us. Then, if that fails, we can have a motion and a second for a revised version of this, adding a teacher and a half with Bill and what's your name? John. Bill and John making the revisions, so we will need, that will be a second vote.
I was gonna recommend, and we've done that many times. in the
And then I just want to also say, one thing that concerns me here, and I'm one who has said, what are all these sports specialists for? What do we need them for? We've questioned this before, but that's something I'm uncomfortable at an 11th hour, sliding it in as a possible pull out of the budget with nobody knowing that that's being considered.
And there are also specialists in marching band and the drama show.
Right,
They're part
there's a
the
lot of
puzzle,
things, I
too.
mean, I would never take something like that away at a split second without having a discussion and giving, people who are benefiting from those things an opportunity to come in and talk, and the coaches, I want to hear from them, so if there's a way that we can, and maybe it's through the newspaper, maybe it's through a post on the website, but first of all, if I'm hearing it right, it sounds like the first motion might fail. The second motion to add the teacher and a half at your discretion of moving the funds will then go out. I don't know, is there a way that we can present things that are being considered?
Well, that's what I think.
Not necessarily the amounts, but things that are considered for the cuts, similar to putting this list out.
Taking off the teachers.
And then that will
That could
be
be the work
discussed.
session.
Right, well, and that would be discussed at our June work session.
Or you can do it during the second motion. But let's just get the first motion going.
If I still have the floor, I'm gonna echo what,
You have the
the
floor.
bird just said in my ear. Does this all make sense?
You have the floor. Is there any other discussion?
I think we're waiting for,
Is there any other discussion?
I think they're,
Okay.
I think that they're trying to discuss whether we can do the second.
Do you need 5 minutes, guys? We can do that if you need it. I mean, this is important stuff. You wanna talk for 5 minutes, we can take a break.
Right, give us 2 seconds to just look at our.
How about 5 minutes? We'll take a
Okay,
5-minute
sure.
recess.
Yeah,
Come back.
Nobody laughed.
Face- May I have a motion to come back into session?
Motion.
Second. Okay. Any objection to coming back into session? Motion carries. All right. Is there any other discussion? I'd like to go last, as I was told that's what a board president should do. You
Then
want
we
to
have
stop,
some
don't
numbers.
you? Yeah,
So
let me just,
can we get the report?
let me just say what I'd like to say here. I'm not gonna be as, I think Brian outdid me tonight as far as talking, so congratulations, Brian.
That's not true.
That's not an
I've
easy.
been added to words, Jack.
The night
Not
is
an
young.
interjection. The night is young, Mrs. Luffy, correct, thank you. 35 years ago, I went on a motorcycle run to bring toys to children in the hospital in Queens, by Kennedy Airport. And I made an investment. And if it pays off tomorrow night, I won't be on this board. I'll be building a children's hospital somewhere in the United States, most likely. The problem is, we'd like to build a hospital where kids can go and get well. And that's the last thing I want to build in my life. My problem has been for the past 35 years, I don't have the revenue to do that. So I made an investment tomorrow night. Doesn't pay off tomorrow night, I'll make that same investment Saturday night. And that's my lottery. What we face here is very similar things we face at home. 2 children that I never thought I'd have. I have to balance my family budget, and I'd like to give these 2 kids everything that I never got. Bottom line is they already have things that I was never able to get. I come to Delaware Valley, they lived the life I always dreamed of having. And it does me better to see my children have this. So when I hear things like that we're gonna cut staff and stuff like that, I do question, where did that come from? Where does this stuff come from? Because you hear so much rumor in this area up here. Nobody here wants to cut staff. We all wanna give these kids everything we possibly can. We have a revenue problem. You know, Corey came up with some suggestions on revenue, and I think we need to address that revenue. As a board director, as a conservative, raising the tax, any tax, should always be my last option, not my first. And it seems there's an awful lot of firsts that I'm faced with in this position. The last thing I want to do is raise the tax. So I have to go out and find ways to cut. Where could our money be better spent? And Marvin is a great help in this fact. He puts LED boilers, he puts LED lights in places. He puts fuel efficient boilers, which we have to buy for up in Dingus. He gets roofs that'll last a lot longer and be more energy efficient too, reflective of heat sources, so that we're not wasting our electricity on air conditioning or less of it. These are things that we can do. They're not revenue raises, but what they do is they save revenue. And I really appreciate what Rosemary said tonight, because when my wife says to me, you know, we should get this for the kids, I just went out and I looked at a $72,000 piano. We're gonna finance that. I always ask, how are we gonna pay for this thing? Sure, I wanna give that to Shaylee. Of course I wanna give it to her. Why wouldn't I wanna give it to her? Am I gonna finance that? So I got a 2005 pickup truck. It's still going. The wheels still turn. The liner falls in on my head, but my head's bald, like Corey pointed out when he took a picture of me the other night at a concert. So how do I finance these things? No. I know we're gonna look at a bunch of teachers here, and I've always said the teachers are our greatest asset in the school. These teachers could teach whether this building was a solid building or whether it was a shack. They can teach, they have that ability, and they're outstanding. How do I pay them? They need to get paid. They have families too. They need a future. This is their life. Their life is dedicated to our children. And sometimes we hear, nobody cares at DV. That's not what I've seen. I've seen a lot of people that care. And they deserve a fair living wage. I have to think, how are we going to do that? How are we going to pay these teachers? Because without them, this brick and mortar doesn't mean anything. But we have brick and mortar charges within this budget, and I'm going to tell people about it. And a lot of our budget is made up for our facilities. And if we don't pay for our facilities now, it's just like anything that you don't do in your own homes. If you have a leak under the kitchen sink and it keeps leaking, you're gonna start destroying the cabinets, the floor, the basement, everything that's below it. So we have to do that. And I didn't hear that tonight. I didn't hear about these things. Last year, I missed a meeting here. I was away on vacation, and we hired an extra teacher because there was a need, and that money came out of budgetary reserve. Or so I thought, but now I heard it didn't come out of budgetary reserve. So I gotta ask the question, where did that money come out of for that extra teacher we hired in August? Where did we find that money?
Other various underspending, people going on leaves. I believe that during the year, we replaced a teacher who left during the year at a lower salary. So for various reasons, whereby on an $84 million budget, we did not have to move the money specifically for that purpose. It was absorbed in our $39 million salary.
Well, going forward, I'd like to be aware of that because I am one not here elected by the public, and I need to know that information. And I did not know that information until last week. And then I said to myself, well, if we didn't spend that money from budgetary reserve, well, then what did we spend budgetary reserve on? Or is it still there? And again, I had no idea of this. I had no knowledge of this. I had no knowledge of nobody came and informed me of the money we saved on health insurance. And there was money saved on health insurance.
Saved.
$180,000, that doesn't ring a bell? Okay.
I'm sure what you're referring there. In the budgetary reserve, we mentioned the need now with all of the retirees that I
I can
expect to
understand
come
that.
to the board with next month.
Tonight, this budget is 11 months old, and I didn't know these things. So going forward, I'd like to know it. Maybe it's my fault that I haven't pushed and been more inquisitive. Maybe it's my fault. Maybe I've been derelict in that duty. It won't happen from now on. From now on, when I see things going forward, whether they be $1,500 or $2,500 or $3,000, I'm going to ask at every meeting, how are these things being financed? You know? Going forward, I'll be asking for every single thing, how will we finance this? And if we don't have a way of financing it, I can't vote yes on it. The last thing I'd like to say is, we're an educational facility first. And when I stood up here the 2 times before, and maybe the 3rd time, who knows, I have to swear on the Constitution of the United States and on the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to provide that education that's required under the State Department of Education to those children. So that's what I'm legally bound to do. And I really have to thank Rosemary because Rosemary found a way to pay for this extra teaching. Cut this, and it was very reasonable. Cut this, cut that, cut this, cut that, cut down, lean, whatever. And I was glad that the sports specialists were put in because I have nothing against a soccer coach or a pitching coach or a dance specialist that we have and things like that. I really have nothing against those things. But when that's put up where those things don't get cut, but we go and we cut money to a learning institution like a library. And we just all sat here tonight and heard a young man that's an Eagle Scout building a little library. So we're gonna cut money to a big library? It just doesn't make sense for an educational facility. We're not a sports facility. We're an educational facility that does have extracurricular with sports included, but education first. So no, I'm a guy that a lot of my education is through the public library and through books. And when I look at the businesses that are closing, you know, I shopped at Fred's sausage store in Brooklyn, the one on Martin Hester in New York City when I was 15, 16 years old. I just heard they were closing today. And I don't know why they're closing. But I also heard that a bookstore was closing in Milford. That's another business, going out of business. And here we're closing places that have books. For me, that's where my education, most of my education came from. Everybody says, well, Jack, you did go to college and all, but you're very well rounded. It's because I read, because schools only teach subjects. Everything else, like I said to this young man, falls in between books. So I'll never agree to take money away from the public library. I think that for a person that deals with education, taking money away from a library, that's just contradictory to what I would do. That's cutting education right there. You know? Something's gotta get cut or we gotta raise revenue. That's basically my whole comments. I do appreciate Corey's research of these numbers because we did a lot of zeros. And there was a lot of government money back in those days too, kicking in for a couple of those zeros. We don't have that luxury today. Nobody's giving us money. I talk to people on both sides of the aisle. Everybody stands up and says, let's support the kid. Let's support our children. Our children are the future. Basically, there's nothing. We're in a very patriotic area here. There's nothing more patriotic to me than to support the education of a child, to support our future. But when it comes to actually funding, we're 46th, right? 46th out of 50 states in funding education. So when I hear from people, I support the child. You need to support the child with money as well. I did go out and I talked to what I consider the biggest business in Pike County besides ourselves, is I talked to some people that are involved in the daycare. We have a ton of them, and I know my children went to Milford Hill, and then Mrs. Quick closed the school down, and those children were dispersed to the existing daycare centers. And I know from, I did not talk to Mrs. Luffy out of respect for this board. That's a kind of like, that would be like kind of a conflict of interest, I would say, maybe. So but I did talk to other ones, and what they tell me is that they're getting a lot of children in, but they're not getting the reimbursement from the state. And they're having problems with their, what you would call your profit margin. Whereas they have more heads, the profit margin is going down. Their profit margin is going down. And that's a big business. That's a big business. So they are affected. And I do see businesses being affected, and I have to be mindful of that. So none of this is really easy. As I said to my friends, it was a lot easier being a Casey Scout leader. This is the job I asked for, so I said, yeah. I appreciate I appreciate everybody's input tonight. I really do. We all want the same thing, which is what Mr. Fisher always says. We want to keep TV strong. We do all want that. We are all serious about these children. Some of us have different ideas on how to get to that goal, but we all have that goal in sight. So I do appreciate your input. Thanks for being very civil to each other and being very respectful to each other. I think we do DV proud and we act in that manner because we are held to a higher standard as this. I don't think there's a person in the world that has a more important job as an elected official than a school board director. I really think we have the most important job in the country. So I appreciate you. Thank you.
Anyone want to hear what we worked on?
Well, do we want to put the first proposal on first?
I think we can amend
I think
can
that
amend
what
the
they were
motion.
gonna do is they were gonna discuss the changes and then possibly amend the motion.
Oh, okay, all right, just so I.
Well, I think we have to get rid of this.
Well, no, you can amend this.
Okay.
While it's on the floor with a
Yes.
second
Yes.
Okay,
and a discussion?
Yes.
all right, then I'm ready to hear.
So what we did is we added the teacher and a half in, and then we all put our heads together about where we could make cuts to offset it, to get it, to keep it at 2.84 with the position. So we would go any higher than 2.8. This was good. Earning your keep.
And by the way, for the minutes, it's not just me. My staff is wonderful. So I failed to mention that when you thank me. But thank you.
Can we, excuse me, I
Sure.
just want, can we cut? Does anybody have any question for any of the teachers or administrators or principals here? They all gotta get up in the morning and look after our kids. You wanna dismiss them? Do you
I
think?
think they want to be here for the
I think
budget.
they
This was the last of them.
Okay, if anybody wants to stay, you can stay.
So if I may just interject, I was saving my comments for the next proposal, but Are you okay if I have comments after John does speak? Or do you want to hear them?
Yeah, you would amend the motion.
Okay.
And then we can open the discussion again.
Okay.
All right, here's what we come up with. Textbooks, potential textbooks are for $5,000 will be gone. The $7,000 for the communications and public relations is being done by staff here now. DARE decreased $2,500. PSSA testing, $12,500. We took on the bottom where there was state and national competitions. When I look closer at it, I believe some of the advisors have been, not aggressive, optimistic about the number of children that may go on the competitions. So we're not cutting them, but I'm thinking that we can get it closer to maybe what's actually going to occur based upon the location of the conferences and number of children that may make the conferences based upon 17-18 data. And of course, 18-19 is happening as we talk. So for next year, so I'm tweaking that $44,800. InfoSnap is gone at $16,000. Athletic specialists and clinician, 5 of them are gone, $8,000.
Which 5, please?
We haven't even done that, we just whacked
Okay.
5. Okay, we put more on that.
And didn't feel comfortable cutting the Pike County Library in entirety. We cut that in half, down, got 12.5 off it. And Kindred Spirits, same thing.
Can I just stop you with the 12.5? The 25,000 that we gave to the New York, to the New York side, to the Pike County Public Library System, I believe $1,500 of that now was towards continuing education. Didn't we dedicate some of that money out?
They didn't do it.
No, I think they ended up with
Portion of it was
1,500
for,
going toward.
ESL education,
Right.
and a portion was for Chromebooks, and the other portion was for tutor.com.
Yeah, they did do that with a little coaching. They helped in their doing.
The adult, how much went toward adult literacy? I thought it was about $1,500.
Yeah, I was gonna say 2,000.
It was very low.
It wasn't a lot.
And that's why I was such a supporter of it, so I'm fine reducing it.
Yeah. Well, it did
I
go.
didn't see the funds.
1,500 did go.
1,500 out of 25,000.
That's what we had agreed to. at the
Right.
time. So it did
Well,
go.
that was all figured out after we put the money forward.
So-
Whomever sat down and figured that out without us.
Okay, so then we're not, that $12,500, is that including any money to that same or no?
I would work with those to establish a new budget. That's what we did the last time. I sat down with the library and we worked out how they wanted to allocate those funds.
Okay, I appreciate that, thank you.
Oh, that's where I was, okay. The Kindred Spirits cut in half from 10 down to 5. And the drug testing percentage of random cut from 10% to 5%, which would be $14,000 in savings. That gets you to the $127,300 that's needed to add the teacher, if you agree. And I believe that if the board wishes to go there, then the motion for the 2.84 with the same expenditure dollar amount, with it referencing, if everybody agrees, or whoever's gonna amend the motion that they wanna do these, then I could make these adjustments and feel like Ashley and I feel, and John, that we would be legitimate as far as putting a proposed final budget on display.
Yeah, so you could amend, somebody could make a motion to amend the motion to include the changes presented by the
So
administration.
can I make a motion to amend the motion?
That's no discussion. So can some of this, so just so I understand, what do we get for the teacher? For what?
For Dingman's,
For where?
for Dingman, Delaware Elementary School.
Elementary.
Yes.
And that's because of class size.
And then a half-time learning support teacher.
Halftime, say it.
Learning support teacher for special education.
Okay.
Does the person who made the original motion have to amend it?
Yes.
Made the original motion.
So John and Brian.
And make a motion to end so that the motion will read approval of the proposed final adoption of the 2019-2020 Delaware Valley School District General Fund budget, reflecting a 2.84% tax increase at a millage rate of 113.85 mils with a balanced budget of revenues and expenditures of $84,060,228 to include the recommendations of the administration. That will include the addition of discussed staff members.
Can anyone second it now?
Yes.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
You approve,
No, we have
you
to-
vote to approve the.
Yeah, we have to vote to approve the amendment for now.
Yeah. So,
All you're discussing.
sidebar, attorney.
All you would discuss now is a discussion as to the amendment. You're not voting on the amended motion. But if you
Just
vote, you
amend.
just vote to just amend that motion.
So don't we need a motion?
They
To
made a motion
amend.
to amend and we have a second on that.
Okay. Is there any discussion on this? Obviously, let's not get confused. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Ron Bouquet,
Yes.
Brian Carson,
Yes.
Jessica Decker,
Yes.
Lori Hall.
No.
Pam Lutfi,
Yes.
Jack O'Leary.
No.
Alicia Sheehan,
Yes.
Rosemary Walsh.
Yes.
John Robleski.
Yes.
7 yes, 2 no, motion carried.
And now, now this new motion is on the table.
Okay, now that we have the new motion on the table, is there any discussion?
Thank you. I would just like to add to this conversation a couple comments on a couple of comments I heard this evening. My husband and I are substantial taxpayers. We have been through the years, and I've never hated paying taxes. And I don't mean to be demeaning, many people do, believe me. And we've encountered some very difficult situations in our lifetime because of taxes. And one of the reasons for that is prior to the index cap, we faced 12%, 14% increases in taxes, killed us. We had to give up a business, basically. You know, we're a district, fastest growing district east of the Mississippi River for how many years? I was part of the district. I saw the population tripling, quadrupling. We had no choice. Okay, we needed new schools, we needed to increase taxes. But I don't know that the consideration went into those budgets that I've seen this group consider. Knowing that we have a teacher's contract coming up, knowing that their increases have accrued when you give out, you know, 3 point.
3 point was the last.
Okay.
Next year, next year.
So that accrues. So, you know, we have a lot of money going out for and very well deserved. I'm not questioning that. So my point is that I'm very thankful for that index, but I know next year we are facing another tax increase. I would rather offset some of it this year and then hopefully find some money from reserves or so forth next year. I've always been very discriminating, as you know, about tax increases. And I feel that right now, after some very careful consideration, it's needed. That's all I wanted to add.
Thank you. I agree with you, Pam. I think it's very important that we long-term plan. Any financial person would tell you that, certainly the man in the front row would tell you that. And my own feeling is with that contract next year, that's our asset. That's what Delaware Valley is. That's it. Everything else is important, but not so much as important as that. And we are facing something there because you have to pay. We have valuable assets here. You have to pay valuable assets. As the man said here that came in from Fort Jefferson High School, you get what you pay for. We have tremendous staff here at Delaware Valley. We have to pay them. So I always worry about how we're going to do that. Thank you for your comments.
May I say one more thing?
Yes, you may.
I think something that I just want to bring out, we get the public, and I'm guilty as charged for many years ago coming to the voting meeting and not showing up for the workshop. But I think there's some very important information that gets lost on the public when they just come to a voting meeting. Some of the discussion that this board had, number one, we're over 2 million that we have cut from where we started. We have through zeros and taking money out of OPEB last year, and that was a huge discussion and a lot of concern. That's giving money back to the taxpayer is what we did through that. Being conservative, which I am, does not always mean a zero. It doesn't mean whittling down so that you have no little, bit to fall back on when you need it. I think we are in a good economy. Does that mean everybody is doing absolutely fabulous? No, but unfortunately, on this side of the desk, that's not what we're determining. We're not determining what our neighbor's doing or what we're personally doing. We're determining how to run this business. We have $2 million that are going out this summer into CapEx projects, capital improvements. That people don't see in the budget, but that is money that has been put away. We've got another, is it 800,000 planned for next year and a 5-year plan. That is all money that is coming out that you're not seeing on the bottom line here. We've got mandated special needs costs that went up this year. Our special needs in the last 7 years for Delaware Valley has gone up 18%, but our state reimbursement for that has only gone up 6%. Okay, all that money in there makes a big difference when you're looking at the bottom line and you're looking at a 1% tax increase equaling $457,000. We've got cyber costs that have gone up this year for cyber school. We are looking into, and administration is hopefully by next year, the start of next year, we're going to have alternative. We have, for those who don't know, we have our own cyber school, which saves us a tremendous amount of money. But we can capture more students who maybe don't have that dedicated learning, who need special services, alternative learning. We're looking at those types of cyber services. So those children who we can't recapture back in the classroom, we can recapture in our own cyber, give them a better learning opportunity, an opportunity to also be attached to their home school and save us $25,000 per student. I mean, it's a lot of, we're talking, if we can recapture half of those special needs students, we're talking about 114,000. Okay, so it's big dollars. So there is a lot that goes into each one of these budgets, and I don't want anybody to think it's as easy as it may appear here tonight. And we're making some tough decisions right here now. We talked about our teachers being our greatest asset, and they are, and they're 82% of our budget is salary?
Just under 81, yeah.
Just under 81, okay, close. And we've got those contracts, they're in a 5-year contract now. That's a contract that predated many of us sitting here. But that's an increase right off the bat, and that's the largest part of our budget. So when we do a zero, automatically you've got to look at what we're cutting for that $1 million in salary that's being added. And the only other thing I want to say is we talked about doing small increases every year and how that would be the hope so that nobody ever gets, that big punch. And I think we were very responsible in doing some of the zeros because we were giving money back. We were doing those zeros through taking funds that were over the amount that the Attorney General, the Auditor General was recommending that we keep. So I think those were responsible when we did them. This year, I think the responsible thing to do is to do an increase. And I like some of the information that was brought up. I think we're going to have more discussion on that in the workshop next month, maybe to fine tune some of them. But thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. You mentioned the facilities. I would feel much more, I'm not a problem with the numbers, I'm a problem with the semantics here. I would like to see some portion of this because as you mentioned, we have a 5-year plan for our facilities. We don't have a dime for it. Nothing to say. We need to save some money for that. We need to either find cost-cutting initiatives or raise revenue. Corey brought up a really good point in the work session of ways that we can raise revenue here through the use of our cyber school. get outside institutions, outside schools to come to Delaware Valley Cyber School and take in money. But it was a way of raising revenue. You also mentioned a couple of other things that and I think that's what we need to do. Or like again, Rosemary, finding ways to within the actual budget to fund these things. But I would like to see a 1% increase in a 1% tax on facilities and tell people, something you can show them. These are two boilers that were put in the 1970s. They're outdated. They're 60% efficiency. We're going to replace them with 98% efficiency boilers. You'll have an original outlay of money, but you will catch that money back in the long term because of efficiency. As they see the LED lighting and things like that. They have a payback analysis on these things and they have a payback time. So I'm more of the problem, and I did mention at the workshop, I have more of a problem on the semantics of this. I would like to see money dedicated for the facilities things. Right now, what we do is we pass budgets, and the money that is left over after that operating year is over, we move that money into capital reserve for board approved projects. That's what it's called. But what we really use that for is our capital improvements to our facilities and our maintenance. So I would like to, instead of taking that at the back end of the budget, put it to the front end of the budget and tell people, you're buying a new roof up in Dingman's. You're buying 2 boilers up in Dingman's. You're putting a lagoon liner in the wetlands behind Shaw Elementary School. Show people where your money's going for. I just don't think we do a good job in showing that. So that's my problem with this. But I'm glad Tony brought that up, so I won't take any more time.
I'd just like to, I don't know, be long, but I have to agree with a lot of the things that John said. And there's been lots of nights that I've sat here and I said that I wouldn't vote for more than a 0. And at the time, I thought that it was the right decision. I don't regret my decision, but I also think though that any time that we can walk out of a board meeting and know that we did the right thing for our students is a night that's a win for all of us. And I think that if we pass this budget, yes, there's a tax increase, but at the same time, we're making sure that those students who are in our classroom, where that's our number one job, the thing that we were elected to do more than anything else in this, that's, as far as our responsibilities, is to educate those students. And I think that this is the right decision to make sure that we're doing the best job that we can to make sure that they have the opportunity to learn in the classroom.
And if I may add something, when we sat down and we spent some time with Maria and went over that special education report that's going into the state, it was very revealing. And it really showed what our needs are in this district in special education. And I think it's important to board members. I hope the public went in and looked at that report. It was on view for 30 days. There is so much information out there. So I think it's really important. I agree. Let's get that information out. Maybe we have to run an advertisement, go in and read so you see why we have the need to add more money for, changes that are happening. So the information is there. It's just not always being looked at by the public. I don't know if every board member read that report.
Last piece I have, I mentioned it at the work session, and while I'm in favor of a tax increase, because I think it's needed, I'm not necessarily supportive of this budget as it's proposed. However, any tax increase that any board member votes on, like I said at the work session, it's an investment in our community. I said, unfortunately, and I say this very big, unfortunately, as taxpayers, we don't get to reap the benefits of a lot of things because we don't have the industry or the economic development within the county where we're turning out our graduates who go to Brown. Kids don't come back anymore. You know what I mean? And that's a lost opportunity for our community. Our community advances as much as the education advances. And so while we keep turning out an excellent product, unfortunately, other communities are reaping the benefits, So while any tax increase is definitely hard to swallow for any board member, I promise you, any board member, it's really hard to swallow. It's really an investment on our society. I said last week, the amount of money you'll cost in social programs and things like that of children that don't get into society and get a job or learn a trade, that don't pay taxes, we pay for them on the back end. You know, eventually you have to pay for them. You know, and it's usually costlier down the road. Promise you. So I just wanted to throw that out there for everybody because I know everybody's put a lot of thought into this, and I appreciate all of the comments.
Thank you. Call a question at any time. May I have a roll call vote, please? Question has been called.
Ron Bouquet,
Yes.
Brian Carson,
Yes.
Jessica Decker,
Yes.
Corey Holman.
No.
Pam Lutfi,
Yes.
Jack O'Leary,
No.
Alicia Sheehan,
Yes.
Rosemary Walsh.
Yes.
John Robleski.
Yes.
7 yes, 2 no, motion carries.
Okay. May I have a motion to approve the resolution urging the General Assembly to adequately invest in public schools and students? Well, we should have done this first. We really should have done this first.
Only a couple of months, but
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
It's a really bad idea. No, I take that.
If the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania funded education, we wouldn't be sitting here dealing with this stuff, and our kids would be very well looked after. And it's a disgrace that we're in a state that's 46 out of 50 in the country is doing this. It's a disgrace that we're faced with these things in this day and age, that we're 46 out of 50. That's my discussion. Anybody else have a discussion or comment?
I would just suggest, this comes through PA School Works. If anyone is interested in looking up on their website or on Facebook and follow them, they have some, they're listing all the time legislative initiatives, things that you can do, suggestions at key times to call legislators. And it's just a nice thing to follow. And, you know, the more of John Q. public who gets involved in that and knows what's going on and can advocate, because you're advocating for the school, you're also advocating for your tax dollars.
What was that called again?
PA School Work. Okay. Excuse me, PA Schools Work.
How long is the resolution on? It's just that, right?
It's just this, it's
Why
just
don't
one
you read
page.
this? Why don't you read this?
Oh, come on, I keep slurring over my words.
Nobody will understand my accent. Go ahead, do it.
Whereas Pennsylvania, more than 1.7 million public school students deserve the highest quality education, and the state's public schools work best when they have the resources to give all students the opportunities they need to succeed. And whereas Pennsylvania ranks 46th among the 50 states in the amount of state subsidies allocated to support elementary and secondary education, among the lowest in the nation, with states' share of funding public education at 38%. And Pennsylvania has the widest funding gap between wealthy and poor school districts of any state in the country. And whereas the state has failed to keep pace with the rising cost of mandated special education for students with disabilities, which has increased by 1.6 billion over the last decade, even as the state's share of the cost has fallen from 36% to 25%. And whereas the state has failed to keep pace with the cost of providing career and technical education, CTE, pathways to students, allowing its share of CTE funding to fall to 8%, leaving school districts with a 90% share of CTE budget. And whereas inadequate state funding places additional burden on local taxpayers to pick up a greater share of public schools' costs to ensure that our students' education is not jeopardized, and whereas the state must make greater sustainable investment in public schools to lift all students and prepare them for today's competitive workforce. Now therefore be it resolved that the Delaware Valley School District urges the General Assembly to take legislative action for public education by increasing basic education funding through the state's fair funding formula, ensuring sufficient resources for special education and career and technical education, and generating the necessary revenue through sustainable recurring funding sources. Be it therefore resolved that a copy of this resolution be submitted to the elected senators and representatives of the Delaware Valley School District in the General Assembly and to the Governor of Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Doug. May I have a motion to approve the resolution urging the General Assembly to adequately invest in public schools and students?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Doug. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no objection, the motion carries. May I have a motion to approve Dawn Bouquet and Rosemary Walsh as voting delegates for the PSBA 2019 Delegate Assembly?
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion?
I would just like to say something.
Yeah, you motioned, that went very quickly, I know.
No, but, hey, I will still be going to PSBA conferences. I'm sure Bill has a little bit of funds in there to allow 3 people to attend.
We just got it.
Not anymore. Sorry.
I'll pay my own. But I'm so happy to see another board member interested. Even when we had the opportunity for two delegates, we didn't always take advantage of that. So when Don stepped forward, that was one more person to be involved. I remember the days when we had 5 or 6 board members attending the conferences. John, I know you used to go to them, and, you know, probably there were times we had almost a full board, including our superintendent sitting at our table for breakfast and lunch and doing the various interactions. So I guess my hope is to see that in the future. You don't have to be a delegate to go. There's so much crucial information that is provided through PSBA. And so, and what I especially like, and I feel this is a positive, Rosemary has a very strong background as a teacher. I think it's great that you're going to see more of business because there's a broad spectrum of who's represented. So now you're going to see the business perspective. You're going to see other
It's an
school board
incredible
members.
learning experience
Yes.
to be done here.
And I think that's really good to bring back to this board. Sometimes we make decisions and you weren't there to know the why. So it's one more person to be involved. I think you'll enjoy it.
One thing I'd like to do too, and we never had the time to do it, but I would like to go through, for instance, I think it's the end of this month or by June 15th, we would have to have, as a board, if we wanted to make a recommendation for a change in the PSBA
The platform,
bylaws,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
We'd have to have that in. So we don't have time this year to do it, but I would love to see us get together and go through them and see if there's any, maybe we wouldn't have any recommendations, but,
I think you have those through June to make platform suggestions.
yeah, but it's not in time for for us to review and vote on them. They have to be in before our next board meeting. That's why I think something that we can
Could
look
email.
to for next
And
year.
we used to email each other, you know, do you have suggestions? And then the delegate will
Yeah,
take
we
those
can-
suggestions. Yeah,
Right.
so just if you have
Well,
something to add.
And that's true too, because when you're making the submission, you're looking for their committee to accept them. If they don't accept them, you can
Right.
still present them at
Yes.
the delegation.
Thank you both for
And-
doing this.
Thank you.
Got it. That's your idea.
I'm retired, you take what you can get.
Thank you too for both taking on the responsibility of doing that.
Yes, it's in October.
You'll be staying at the travel inn.
Travel.
You haven't heard that, but. Is there any other discussion on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no objection, the motion carries. It was quick, wasn't it?
Yeah.
May I have a motion for the expulsion of student 2018-2019 4000561 for 90 school days with the right to reapply after 33 school days if stipulations are met.
Second.
There's no discussion on this. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no objection, the motion carries. May I have a motion for the expulsion of student 2018-2019 100100044 for 90 school days with the right to reapply after 45 school days if stipulations are met?
Motion.
No discussion
How
on
many
this.
school days did we say?
45. This one's 45, the last one was 34.
It's 90 school days with a right to reapply after 45 school days.
Thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no objection, the motion carries. Other business from the board.
You guys in a hurry to get home?
No?
Okay. I just would like to mention something, maybe John, you'll add to this. On April 29th, Jessica and I traveled to Harrisburg for the PSBA Advocacy Day. And it really was a wonderful experience. We were so warmly greeted by Senator Baker and Representative Piper. Um, and the high, well, John was also recognized for his music award, and he spoke in front on the steps with the garage background.
The marble steps, we just took a picture, it looked like a garage door.
But we did manage to get some other nice pictures in too. And it was nice to see our superintendent up there in front of everyone, standing by those beautiful white steps, addressing the funding formula and other aspects of education. But the highlight of the day, and please join in, was when we got to meet with Lisa and Mike. And we sat together with them in Lisa's office. And we really had the most comfortable conversation. And we discussed a few items that are very important, and we do need to meet with you to review some of that. It's just, we've all been very busy, so now that the budget is over. So whether you're a PSBA delegate, or you're a citizen in Pike County, or a business owner, or a school board member, we have two legislators who are so accessible to us that there's no reason that we can't pretty much have their help when we need it. And one of the things that was very surprising to me was Lisa and Mike did not know that we carry the bill for students who are placed outside of the district. A comment was made, I didn't address it, that will be later, but that's very interesting. So, no, right? They both said it.
They're
So-
adjudicated students that we bear the
Yeah,
burden of,
right.
of
So-
educating them still. They thought that the state picked up that.
So that is going to be a topic of discussion that we will be going forward with, and along with a couple other items. So there's always an avenue. Who would have thought, right? I don't.
Did you get an opportunity to speak to Rosemary Brown as well, or was she just?
She wasn't there for.
I did, earlier in the day. I was able to get in.
Because we need to remind her every once in a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
She was
we were
really
able to
good.
drop off literature to Rosemary.
I got to see her early in the morning before, and then she came down to see the kids. We had 3 different music groups performing. And the
Yeah,
time
I
that
saw them
ended,
actually
it was
on
swing,
Facebook.
And then she came in and she made an effort to come down with Mike and Lisa to see the kids playing in the East Wing, which was nice. So,
Just as general thought there, I find people care, when people care about things, they're in the know, and when they don't care about things, they're not in the know.
Well, Lisa is the head of the Judiciary Committee. She was, when the whole Cash for Kids debacle occurred, she was the legislator who fought hard for those kids, and she brought through some very positive changes. She is looking out for kids, and she's looking out for kids who are placed in other areas, other schools, whatever, detention centers, prisons, and so forth. She does care about that greatly. As far as that funding formula, I don't know why she doesn't know about that, but we're all going to learn about it together and see. And I'll bring up one incident. This was many years ago, and I was a member of workforce development way back when it was called something else. And at that time, businesses in Pike County could only participate in workforce development if you were for profit. So I had switched to, and this was back during the 90s, and of course at my center I had switched to being nonprofit because I wanted to participate in the Head Start program. Now all of a sudden I can't have any workers from workforce. So Lisa was still an aide for Senator Lamond, and they used to come to Tom Quick Inn to have their local meetings. And so I sat with them and talked about that. And it wasn't soon after that, and that's a federal program, but it wasn't soon after that that they changed that ruling, and nonprofits were allowed to participate, and it's been that way ever since. So this was for Pennsylvania. The funds came down to here, and she went to the governor, and they worked that out. So never underestimate how your legislators can help you.
And the cost of the education was kind of to what Lori was saying,
Yeah.
and the typical, what I've said for
Absolutely.
invest in them
Yeah.
now or pay for them later,
Yeah.
and it's definitely, like you said, your promise, it's more to pay for them later
Yes,
Yeah.
than it is to invest in them now.
I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because we have workforce development kids here every summer in Martin.
You do, yeah, back
So that's
then
where
you
can
couldn't,
know
but
the history of it, yeah.
and in Pike County, because, one of the reasons is labor unions. When you look at Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, they didn't want to lose workers, and funds were so slim back then too. But, Pike County, we have hospitals and schools. We don't have a lot of industry. So there weren't opportunities for the students and other workers to pursue.
I don't know if you all saw I sent it to John, the NJ Herald article about Vernon, our neighbors to the south. What they're doing, because the state cut their funding, actually, there's kind of a Hail Mary, I say. They're sending their superintendent and their board president to Beijing to attract Chinese students to get them to pay tuition. Kind of like I mentioned last month about what Mount Olive's doing with these alternate revenue sources. But it's just amazing on what's happening in the Northeast right now with all these different funding formulas and things.
So we're shipping John up to Beijing?
Well, actually, I think it didn't say in the last one.
Oh, yeah.
Superintendent's not going.
Yeah, that's-
Because there's so many end of the year things, she's making the assistant suit go.
No, it's really
So look out,
amazing.
directors. Gina's probably going there in the next couple months when she retires anyway. We'll contract with her.
It's really amazing. I mean, Pope John has a flourishing Chinese population already, and you never would have thought. Mount Olive Township down there, and you probably see it all the time, Jack and NJ Herald. It's really amazing.
Okay, is there any other business from the board? All right, I'd like to make a comment. Rosemary called the question, it's parliamentary procedure. When somebody calls the question and it's recognized, we go to a vote. One thing I would have liked to have said in that thing is, I was told a long time ago when I got involved, not that long ago, I was 50, it was 6 years ago. He said, Jack, you can always say no to something, and then you can say yes later on. What really hurts a person, though, is when you say yes and then you have to say no. That's what really hurts a person. Young man stood up here tonight with this library. You all know how I feel about libraries and books. You all know my past. I can't look that man in the eye and cut $12,500 out. I don't have a problem with the budget tonight. I have a problem with the facilities part. I would like that to be separated out to tell our people. I think they're responsible to do that, but I wouldn't have said no to it. I said no because of $12,000 was cut out of the library. Find a way to find $12,000, and I'll say yes. So simple. If you can't find a way to find $12,000 and fully fund the library, you guys don't need my vote. I'll say no. And yes, I am that Irish to do that. Because if I have to look a man in the eye, a young man in the eye that's going on to life, and I can't be true to him, well then, the whole principle of denying oneself to be true, that goes out the window. If I don't have that in me, I shouldn't be sitting here. So that was my decision. I appreciate everybody tonight respecting everybody else's opinion, especially when maybe you just don't understand the other person's opinion. I think it speaks a lot of this board, our quality. So I appreciate it. Is there any business from the public? Okay, the announcements, meeting schedule, June 13th, 2019 is the work session at 7 p.m. Delaware Valley Administration Offices. June 20th, 2019, regular board meeting, 7 p.m. Delaware Valley Administrative Offices. Favorite thing in this group, may I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.